Good morning, everybody. So we're going to continue today with lesson 9, with text, lists, tables, sort of thing. Today we're going to work specifically on styling, well, adding tables and styling them. There's a variety of ways that you can do that. I have the final page loaded at the moment that has where we add 2 separate tables. Here's one for 2017 event schedule. And you can see that the information or the data is arranged in a very strict kind of grid. And that's what tables do. We can see that we have a table header. That's what this is here. We also see that the tables are arranged in rows and columns. And so for certain things, it's still very useful. There was a time in early web design, actually it lasted for quite a while, that tables were used to structure the page. And they weren't very efficient. It was pretty awkward compared to what we have today using CSS, along with HTML5. So really it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago with HTML5 and CSS3, I think things really exploded and took off. What we could, you're seeing what we're doing today. But prior to that, pages would be structured and built using tables. So you could take an individual row or a cell and you could put in your header, you could put in your nav bar and that sort of thing. But none of it, you wouldn't be using Bootstrap. You might be using images. You might be using just text. There were considerable limitations. And it was also very difficult for people with disabilities to be able, with the reader, to be able to get the content from the pages themselves. So this has been, I mean, they were thinking a while back that maybe tables should be eliminated altogether, but then they realized, hey, they do have a function. There is a purpose for these things that we can, that can work for us. So here's the first one we have that we'll bring in. So this one is an HTML page that they've already provided for us. And then what we're going to focus on is learning how to style it. But prior to styling these, we'll show you how you can add a table by hand. I'll do that first. And then here's another one that we're going to add using a separate data that we would maybe from, what is it? It would be, an Excel spreadsheet, something like that, if you wanted to bring information from that. So the top one up here has, and this is where it gets a little tricky, make sure that both are styled accurately or correctly, is that the top one has 4 columns. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one has 5. So how do you take and adapt from the 4 to the 5? And it sounds simple, but it's easy to get tripped up, and I hope that I don't get tripped up with that today. And then the last thing that we're going to do, we won't get to do that today, we'll probably do that after spring break, is what you want to do is that when it's visible on a smartphone, notice how it's styled very differently. So you have to adapt the styling for a media query, just as we did for the list, the unordered list that we did on Tuesday. Okay, so we're going to work on tables today. So let me get my I got to see here. I have there's my working file right here. Nope, wrong one. My mistake. That's Green News working file. Sorry. Calendar working file. That's the one that I want right here. So this is where we start. Remember, make sure that your root folder is connected to, or I say linked to lesson 9, and that the image folder contained within lesson 9 is the one that's targeted. so that the paths work out correctly. Then in addition to that, what we're doing here is I created from the template that we created in lesson 8, a new page, and I put in green events and classes in this paragraph here, okay, by hand. Now, what I want to do is I want to add a table. So we're going to build the first table by hand. So I can either do that from here, or I can do that from probably, because most of the time we'll have to spend it in design view. Let me try it from here first. So what I want to do is I want to insert, and I want to insert HTML, and I want to insert a table. So let me go right here. Here's table. And it's going to prompt me. I want it after the paragraph tag. So after, okay. And then what I want is we're going to leave the header out of it at the moment. But what they want us to do is they just want us to add 2 rows. And we're going to add 4 columns. Okay, and that's it. And we're going to leave the border thickness 1 by default. Typically, borders look pretty ugly. The other thing that we're going to do too is that we're going to make it not 100 or 200 pixels. Tables can be presented either in pixels or in percentages. We're going to use percentages, and we're also going to override this a little bit with the styling that we're going to create using CSS. But for starters, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add that. So let's go ahead and do that. And there it goes. Okay. You can see that I have a table added down here. Unstyled, not much going on here. So I'm going to switch from live view to design view. And let's see if we can stretch this out a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. Sometimes when we want to add content to this, the sidebar gets in the way, and it's really easiest if we do this in, I say easiest, but it's not easy to add this in design view. It gets really awkward in, let me see if I can't stretch this out a little bit more, and I can't on my laptop. So I'm going to do the best that I can here. So I'm just going to click inside the cell, and you can see that we have 4 columns, 2 rows. And the first thing that I want to do, normally where the header would be, is I'm going to add date. And then I'll click into the next cell. And that's, by default, it's centered, meaning top and bottom, but it's flush left. And then I'm going to type in event. And also what you might notice too is that as you add content, okay, I'm going to hit the tab key. Notice that tables kind of function like a pair of spandex pants. Is that if there is no content, they shrink to nothing. And then if there is content, then they expand to fit. So I've added event. Now the next thing, and I do have to refer to the textbook, a location and then cost. So I want location. And hit the tab key, and I'm going to put in cost. Okay. Now let's go down to the next row, and we're going to add additional information in here. We want May 1st will be the date. I'm sorry, I'm having troubles here with my book and stuff. There we go. Okay. So May 1st is the date. Does it have to be this? No. So for those of you, later this semester when you're designing your own website from Dreamweaver, maybe you're designing it for a band and you want to display dates and locations and costs for shows that are coming up. You could do that using a table. Maybe some of you want to do a website for a sports team, soccer team. And again, maybe you want to list statistics for individual players or the team as a whole. Or again, maybe you have events that you want to, matches that you want to make available to viewers, then tables would be a good way to display that. So this is going to be here, May Day Parade. And I'm going to hit the tab key, and that sends it over one more. And then we want location is going to be City Hall. Hit the tab key again, and the cost is free. Okay, now if I go back to live view, we can get a see what this looks like. Not very special. I mean, you could leave it this way. But again, notice that with the table selected here, or not selected, but the table, it butts up right up against the footer. So, that's not working really well for us. The styling of it, I find that the way that the default size of the border for tables is really kind of ugly. It's, 1 pixel and doesn't look aesthetically very pleasing. It actually isn't all that easy to read, but it helps. Okay. Some of the other things that you can do, later on, if you decide, what, I need to add columns or I need to add rows, we can do that. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. Probably the easiest way is to select the table. So just clicking anywhere in the table, and then down below in the tag selector, make sure that the table is selected. And then you'll notice in the properties panel down here, I have rows and columns. Now, if I want to add a row, so let's add, have a total of 5 rows. And columns, let's go ahead and make that 5 columns. Okay, and I'll go ahead and I'll hit the tab key. And notice how it has added them. It automatically adds columns to the right and it adds rows to the left. Or I'm sorry, rows to the bottom and columns to the right when you're doing it this way. Likewise, if I decide that I don't need 5 rows and I only need 4, it will take the one away. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to remove the column. Let's, I want, just 4 columns. There we go. So again, it takes it away from the right. You can also select a row by clicking and dragging like so. And if I right click on it, you'll notice that I have tools available to me here. For example, in the table, I can merge cells. I can insert a row. I can insert a column from here, insert rows or columns, and you can delete a row. So that's available to you as well. Okie doke. Ready to move on. So the next step now is that they have provided for us. And if we come back over here to calendar. So here's one that's way more complicated. It's already been filled out. And again, this could be, instead of an HTML page, it could be an Excel spreadsheet. But I want to make sure that, and this is what gets tricky when we're copying and pasting, is that I want to make sure that this is in design view. And make sure, again, that the table, not the body, but the table is selected. So let me click somewhere, anywhere in here. There we go. Make sure that using the tag selector, that the table is selected, and then I can hit Command C for copy. And now I want to go to my working file. Okay. And similarly, what I want to do is I want to take the entire table, make sure that it is selected. So I'm going to click anywhere, somewhere in here, make sure that the whole table is selected, and then I can paste. Notice how it's added. Okay, it replaced what I had before, and it's with the one that was created as an HTML page. And it's a good start, but now we need to style it and make it look presentable for us. Okay, something that's a little aesthetically a little bit more pleasing. And this is where, styling this thing using CSS is where all the work is going to take place. Okie doke. So that's what we have so far. So the next step is to go ahead and start styling this thing. So what I want to do is I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. And this is where it gets a little weird, but we'll do my best. Try not to make too many mistakes here. So let me pull this over. If I can grab it and pull it over. There we go. I'm going to switch to CSS Designer. Okie doke. So here we go. We have our table. It's in design view. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start creating some properties for this thing. So one of the first things that I need to do is to style the table itself and decide, what typeface am I going to use? What width do I want? Right now it's set to 100% by default. We're not going to make it quite that wide, maybe 90%. So to do so, I need to make sure that I have green style selected. I want global selected, and I'm going to add a selector. And the selector, this is going to be, you know what? I forgot something. Let me go ahead and I'm going to put section table. Told you I might forget something while I'm talking to you. This needs to be wrapped in a table. I'm in a table. The table needs to have a section tag wrapped around it. Now I can either do that by hand, as we've done before, okay, or we can select the whole table. So let's click anywhere inside here. Let's select the table. And now I can insert from here, or I can insert from over here. Maybe the DOM would be a better way of doing that. And I can click the plus. And what I want to do is not before, after, or child, is that I want to wrap the tag here, not with just a plain div, but with a section tag. And you can see that now a section tag has been wrapped around it. So now when I go ahead and I style this table, okay, using section.table, it will be properly styled. And you can see that it's, appearing in gray. Anytime I click on this, because I'm in design view. So let's see if it works. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go to type. And I want to select a font family. And the font family that we're going to use for this is going to be, if I can find it, let's go. It should be Arial, narrow, or maybe we need to create our new one for ourselves. I didn't realize that we had to do that. So let's go ahead and create one. I don't see it. I don't see the font family that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create a custom font stack. So I'm going to go to Manage Fonts. Okay, and I'm going to create a custom font stack here. So that's what we want to do. And I'm going to come down here and to find it, rather than to scroll through all of it, I'm going to put it in here by hand. And I want it to be Arial, narrow. Arial, narrow. That makes sense. So let's go ahead and with Arial narrow selected. That will be the first. And because we have a lot of data, a lot of text in a narrow space, a narrow typeface or a condensed typeface would work well for us. The next one that we want is just plain old Arial, if Arial narrow isn't available. Okay. Come on. I'll just select it from there. There we go. We'll add that. And then after that, we want Verdana. Verdana used to be one of my favorite typefaces. because it was designed specifically for the web in mind. It's a nice sans serif typeface. And notice in the design of the website that we've been building here in the lessons, they are using mostly sans serif typefaces. This is specifically for large blocks of text, or areas of text that might be unusually difficult to read. They do leave it serif or block serif or something, or a slab serif for headlines, and that's okay. And then the last one is going to be just the generic sans serif. So we'll add that. So that will be our new. So now I can go, now that I've created that font stack, I can come in here, and here's the one that we've just created. So that's what I want to add to that. Okay. After that, what we want to do is we're going to do a couple of other things. We're going to see, and let's see, make sure that everything here is selected. So I have a section table, and let's see if it affects. So under the affects everything the way I want it. Under layout or width, I want this to be done in percentages, and I'll know right away if this is working or not. If I switch to percentage, okay, let's see if that should shrink to nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and select 90% in here. That's what I want. We also want, or I'm sorry, 95%. My bad. 95. There we go. And margin along the bottom, make sure that we add some width to that, or some space to the bottom of that. I'm going to make sure that that's 2 M's. So instead of pixels, we're going to use 2 M's. And that we're not seeing at the moment. Font family, make sure that that was selected, that we have here, that we created. Font size, we're going to use 90%. So that should shrink it a little bit. So we're going to use it in percentage. Let's go, yeah, see how that shrank. So I know that it's affecting the area that I want. So I want it 90%. There we go. So it's a little bit smaller than usual. And then the border along the bottom, and this is what we're going to do to get rid of the unsightly borders around everything. So what we want to do is we want to switch to border, and we only want border on the bottom here. So we're going to override the standard setting, and we're going to add width is going to be 1. No, my mistake. Because this will be along the bottom. So this is going to be along the bottom of the table itself. The width is going to be 3 pixels. 1. Sometimes it's just so hard to select some of these. Whoops, not 33 pixels. And then I want it to be solid. And then the color that I want is going to be green. So it's going to be the 060 that we've used before. 060. Add that. There we go. So I'm going to switch just to see if all of this is working. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch from design view back to live view before I go too much further with this, and see what we got going on here. And you can see that the borders have been removed. But if I scroll down to the bottom here, you can see that I have that green border along the bottom. Under each of the rows, we will be adding a 1-point green rule. Everything is set pretty tight in here, so we need to change the settings for that. We also need to specify a header for this, where it says date, event, location, and cost. That's going to be separate visually from the rest. So that'll be one of the first things that we do. Okay. So again, I can leave that from here in the time being. But when I start to manipulate the individual rows and columns, then I'll have to go back to design view. So let's give that a whirl. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add section TD, comma, which for table data. And then I'm going to make another one too for section TH for table header. So, but we're going to combine those together. So I'm going to go ahead and add one here. And it's going to be section table data, comma, and then section table header, TH, with the return key twice. And now we can proceed to add a little bit of padding, text alignment, and border for the top. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So with this selected here, and it should affect all of these immediately, let's add some padding here. So I'm going to go down here, and I want all the way around. So padding is going to be, we can just use 4 pixels, 4 px, and see what happens here. Notice how the spacing changed pretty dramatically, so that we have a nice amount of air floating around each one of those now. It still needs to be styled further, but much better than having it all grouped together. And again, by using the, I could have put it in 4, 4, 4, 4 separately, but by just putting in 4 pixels here and the shorthand method, it automatically added it 4 pixels all the way around. So the next thing that we want to do under text is make sure that it's all aligned left. So under text align, we're going to make sure that we have left selected. And it was left by default, but some of it later on is specifically for the cost is going to be centered. And then what we want to do is border top for all of this. So we want to select a border here. We want border top, and this is where we're going to add that green line that I was talking about, that little green rule line. We want the width to be 1 pixel. So let's put in here, but right now it has none. We want 1 pixel, and we want the style to be solid. Let's go to solid. And the color, it's going to be a green. We want 090 for this now. So this is not quite as dark. 090. There you go. Okay, so there's that green line that's been added. And again, it visually looks, you know, aesthetically more pleasing than not having anything. But at the same time, it provides an important function for readability. It separates the content for each of those groups so that we can read it a little bit better. The next thing that we need to do is we haven't defined the header yet, but we're going to go ahead and do one for the header. We haven't specified which of these is a header. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do section TH. And we, instead of the text being aligned left, we're going to have it centered. We're going to also make sure that the border on the bottom is a little bit heavier. We're going to make it a 6 pixel, and we're going to change the background color too. So the color of the text will be that light yellow. So, you know, we're changing quite a few things here. So let's go ahead and add, again, make sure that we have green styles, global. We're going to add a new one here. And we want section TH for table header. Now, notice that we had one for section table header here, but we grouped the table data and table header together. So whatever rules that we specified for that affect both of those. In this particular instance, we only want it to affect the table header, which will be changed up here shortly. So again, what I need to do is we're going to change the color of the text to FFC. That's that yellow. FFC. There we go. I'll add that. And that nothing's changing because we haven't specified in the table yet, which is table header yet. We want text alignment to be centered. We want the border along the bottom to be solid. So along the bottom, just the bottom, nothing else. We want it to be width 6 pixels. As I said, we specified that we want it solid. And we want the color to be 090. This should be, no, that's a different one. I want 090. There we go. It's a little bit lighter green. That's the one that we want. Okay. So the next step now is to define the area of the this to be a header, a table header. And that's just the top row. So to do that, I need to switch from live view and I need to go to design view. And so now if I select inside here, okay, I can change this from table data to table header. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put TH in here, TH, and change this to TH. Okay. Let's see if it changes it. Let's go back to design view, or from design view back to live view and see what happens. Did it change it? No, it didn't. So I did something wrong. That is table header. Oh, you know what? I misspelled section. See, I told you I can't type. I knew that when you do something like that, I guess this is sort of a cop-out, but sometimes, you know, when you do make a mistake like that, as I told you, I'm a horrible proofreader, a horrible typist, that when you notice that you make a mistake, it's best to proof and make the changes as you go. And now you can see, okay. Now, did I change the background color? I should have changed the background color of that. So, you know what? I goofed. We had the border. I didn't change the background color. So let me go back to table header. Let's change the background. And this is where I wanted the background color to be 090. There we go. Okay, there we go. So now they've all changed. And again, I'm in live view, but I want all of these to be table header. So I'm going to go back to design view. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag to make sure that all of these along the top row are selected. And then you'll notice in the properties panel down here, I could go in code view and change them all, but there is a little checkbox down here that turns that all into a header. And when I click on that, now I've redesigned all of that, and it looks pretty nice. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to style the table cells, and that can get a little tricky. So I'm going to give that a whirl. We're going to do we're going to create a new rule here for table data and section table header. Let's see. No, I already did that. So what am I doing? I'm not paying attention here. Oh, I goofed. I mean, I didn't, but I'm not paying attention. I'm looking at, you know, making sure that I'm in the right place in my textbook, and I'm not. So now what I want to do, I'm kind of gonna get ahead of things, because what we're going to do down here where it says class, we're going to, in advance, we're going to add some classes. We're going to add a class for date, one for event, one for location, and one for cost to style all of this. So that's what I'm going to do now. We're going to go ahead and add them first before I specify that each of these columns are under the date, event, location, or cost. So I'm going to do that right now. We're going to go ahead and there will be the first one. I'm going to go ahead and add a new selector. And this is going to be section space dot date space dot date. And then we're going to add another one that's going to be section space dot event. And then we want, do I have one for date? You know what? I don't think I added that one. So let's go back again. Let me undo that. I didn't hit the return key enough times. There we go. So let's do that again. So I'm going to go ahead and add again. And I want it to be section space dot date. There we go. Now it's added. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another one. You got to make sure that they're added before I start adding new ones. This is going to be section space dot event. And we're going to add another one. This is going to be section. Nope, you know, see, I didn't spell it right. It's not going to work. So let's go back up here. There we go. And this one I want to be section space dot location. Can't spell. And the last one will be section dot cost. So I'm going to go ahead and add another one. Section space dot cost. So we're customizing each of the columns is what we're doing here. Okie doke. So what I want to do is let's start by changing the date, the width of the date to 6 M's. So I'm going to go ahead up here and I'm going to change the width here. And I want the width to be 6 M's, but we haven't specified any of the columns to be date yet. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add it now. So let's do it in M's. And I want it to be 6 M's. 6. Okay. So in order to determine that this column falls under the category of date, and you need to be in design view to do this. And this is where it can get a little tricky. This is where I said we're going to use, I'm going to go ahead and select all of by clicking and dragging, all of the cells that are in the date column. Okay. And now what I can do is where it says class down here, I need to find under D, and this is going to be kind of hard to find. You scroll down, but because I added it in advance, I can now, I'm in the B's and C's, and hopefully I can find it soon under, a bunch of these are bootstrap. So I don't want to change those. But if I keep going under, lots of them under C's, some that you'll never use. And here's the one that I just created, date. Okay, notice how it just automatically updated the width of that. So I'm in good shape. I'm doing well with that. So the next thing that we want to do is we're going to do the same for all the rest of these, for event, location, and cost. And then we need to change some of the properties of the other ones. For example, cost. Now I changed the one for date. I can do the same for cost, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select each one of these like so, and make sure I select all of the cells in that column. There we go. And now I come down here to class, and I want this to be event. So I'm going to click here again and scroll until I find the one for event. So whatever changes that I make to these in the styles will affect the entire column. Did I skip it? EF, I did. There it is, event. So now all of those have event. Okay. I want location to be assigned. So I'm going to click and select all of these. And I need to go under class. And we need to find that class that we created called location. So that's going to be under the L's. So I have to scroll until I get to the L's and find location. Should be up here. There it is right there, location. Got one more to do. Cost. So make sure that I have all of the ones in the cost column selected. And they're going to be cost, and then I'm going to affect it as well, because I want this to be centered. But before I do that, let's go ahead and let's change that to cost. So that should be under the C's. That should be easy to find, hopefully. Come on, cost. Lots of C's. And it's right here, cost. There we go. So I want under cost. So let me go back to the one that I said for cost. And I want the text, the alignment to be centered. And you'll notice it should update that. Boom. And it did that, just not fine. And I also want the width for cost to be 4 M's. So I'm going to go back up here. And I want under width, we're going to use M's. And I want 4 M's for that. 4. So that should change the width of that a little bit. Are there any others? And I think not. So we have, let's go back here and let's switch from design view to live view and see how we've styled our table. Not bad. So now we have to insert another table using different data. We still have like 10, 15 minutes, but it's going to take us a while to actually finish that part of the lesson. Probably longer than the time that we have for today. So I'm going to leave it at this point for all of us. And also I have a question from Casey. So, but when I get done answering her question, it says, Professor, when I pasted the dates and such, the table disappeared. Okay. What you need to do, if it disappeared, remember that you need to be in both in not live view, but you need to be in design view when you do that. So when I did that, this is the calendar HTML that they provided for us. So that's an HTML page. You can click anywhere inside that. Make sure that you are in design view. Okay. So with that, click anywhere inside it and then use the tag selector down here to make sure that the whole table is selected. And then hit Command C for copy. And then you can go back to yours. And again, right now I'm in design view. So with that, the 4-column table that we created by hand, what you want to do is, again, click anywhere inside the table, make sure that you're in design view, and then go ahead and make sure that the table using the tag selector is selected, not the section, but the table. And then with it selected, then go ahead and hit Command V paste, and it should put all the content in there. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to pause recording. We'll call it quits for today. We'll add a second table, and we're going to do some other styling. And then we'll probably, after spring break, we will also have to work on getting the tables to work for various screen sizes. So we're going to have to work with the media query that we created so that it looks nice and works well on a really small smartphone. So I'm going to pause the recording right now and say goodbye, sort of, but don't go away yet. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have everyone who is here checked off on the roll. And then you guys have a good spring break, and I will see you when you come back. So hold on here. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, say goodbye.